interesting little advertisement, so to speak. You want to just right now? George Graves is actually Grant Graves' father. Grant was the young man that spoke this morning. Anyway, George and I, we've known each other for a long time. Lives over in the Dunlap area. He's physically active, and you're getting officially old, right? I am now officially old.
We're going to live forever, so we're all young.
That's true. But anyway, he's got some, these are rejects, right? They were on special at Walmart, right? No, okay. Maybe you're going to tell us a little bit about this. But what we're trying to do is moving into this activity-oriented section about being physically strong men. George was telling me about this, and I said, well, you got to share this. So anyway, this is not on the schedule, but it'll be fun. Here you go. Here's George.
All right. How long do I have? Just keep it short. All right, keep it. All right. Short is very relative. Hey, first off, I'm a family doctor, and I see a lot of my patients, they really want to be active, but they just, their football injuries or something is not very active. And by the way, if you do studies for the, if you compare tennis players to bikers to swimmers, who lives the longest? Who? Oh, you're so smart. But anyhow, and it's a great way to connect to people like aren't Christians or aren't Seventh-day Adventist Christians or just whatever. It's a great way to connect to people. But quick nutshell, I've been playing a little bit since I was 12, just casually, and it's a good racket, And unicycles are good, they're good ways to get around. But you take Grandma's old bicycle compared to a unicycle, you're going to win on Grandma's bicycle. So anyhow, I stumbled across this at American Medical Tennis Association. Had a similar racket. It's a little different, and I fell in love with this one. But I call it the gospel of tennis, and that's a little g. It's not the big capital G, all capitals for the real gospel. But it's a great way to connect to people. And if you never want to play tennis, get a couple pictures of this, because at least it's a great conversation starter if you never want to play tennis. Now, we'll be down tonight. See, when the social things start at what time? After we're done. So it's around 7:30, is that right? 8:30? 8. So anyhow, I have a friend who's let me borrow a ball machine for 2 years. He will not let me buy it. He says, we're good friends. We're really not that close of friends. So the Lord has blessed me with an amazing ball machine. I got some extra rackets. But and this one actually double strings. It's on top and bottom. So you can't, they call it, framing the ball. If you're hitting with the top spin, the ball goes into the stadium if you're playing in front of stadiums, or goes over the fence. But God's got so many great things that can help keep you active. And if you take care of your body with healthy self-care, then you can take better care of your wife, your kids, your neighbors, and your friends. So anyhow, anyone wants to, I'm not an official tennis teacher, but I can teach you a lot, and I got plenty of rackets.
So he's in the racket. Anyway, George has been talking to me about this for years, and I was going, when he brought him, I said, you got to show these. How many of you have ever seen a double-handed tennis racket? You seen these? No, it's like, okay, what is that? But anyway, he's going to have that as an activity this evening up at the tennis court if you're interested in doing something different. And
what now? Oh, the way you play. Here,
let me hold the mic.
So anyhow, most of us, 9% of us are right-handed. Well, this makes you ambidextrous because you learn pretty quickly to be just about as good left-handed on they call it a backhand. Now you don't have a backhand. You have 2 forehands. And you have a two-handed, double-handed either way. So if this racket has 100 shots, you have between 200 and 300 shots. So you look better than you really are. And the balls are like a homesick angel. It wants to cross the net, which I still can't fully understand, but it wants to stay in the court. So it's a sweet thing. It's the gospel of tennis. And if you never play tennis, you can at least take a picture and say, hey, here's a conversation started. We talked about the real gospel. And by the way, I didn't grab it by having the car. Those play ping pong. They have a double-handed ping pong paddle, too. And I kid you not, I told from the folks who own this company, he's a ping pong player, too. And they won the national. He didn't, but a person playing with this, fairly new, won the championship last year in Las Vegas. So it's worth $50,000 to that guy. So.
Okay, I didn't make this up. This is real. Okay, so anyway, cool. Thank you, George. That's a fascinating thing. Well, on the stage here, like we've had all this stuff, I'm going to have one little window to just kind of explain. This weight bench over here, the old-timey thing, how many of you have done some torture on that rack, right? Okay, so if in my mind, I think, okay, a strong guy, he could probably push, what, 250, 300, 350 and up. I mean, some of these guys are massive. I've seen a few big guys in here. But I think my max ever was maybe 220, 230. I'm not that big of a guy. But anyway, bench press, right? Bunch of stuff you can do here. Then you got the barbell, the dumbbells. This is an interesting thing. I'm just kind of going through stuff here because I brought it over. Okay, what do I have here? This is a spine, right? Yeah, I think it's a calf. It's not anything too big of an animal, but this reminds me that, men, we need to have a backbone, right? Right? Need to have a backbone. And then there's some nice military helmets. How many of you served in the military, guys? Let's give them a hand. All of us are in God's army, right? And we're supposed to put on the helmet of salvation. So every day are we getting equipped, right? And these are some old mountaineering boots. In, being in the army of God, what are the shoes? Peace, right? Okay. So this has to do with peace, which means that I'm not going to slip, right? And if you've ever been on ice-covered mountain, having crampons on boots, this is kind of a cool one here. This is an axe, and this reminds me that an axe needs to be sharp to work right? And one of the things I like to tell guys, and we have an event coming up in January. It's on my website, blueprintformen.org. But anyway, it's called Chainsaws and Butter Knives. A couple of guys have been wearing the T-shirts around. But the idea there is, guys, we want to be that ultimate, tool, the chainsaw. But sometimes we need to be butter knives. We need to be gentle, right? But nevertheless, as a blade is only as good as its sharpness, how do we get a sharp blade? It's by removing what is dull. Okay, and that's probably one of the hardest things to do is to say what needs to go in my life, right? And so that's a good question for you to consider as well. And also to stop periodically. I think that's one of Covey's 7 principles is periodically stop to sharpen the blade. I've got a yoke back here. And you know what that speaks to me of? Is that I'm supposed to be yoked with Christ, right? And talk about intimacy, being hooked together with Him. I usually tend to think of God as being distant, but when He says that He's my friend, He's my Lord, my friend, He's right here. He's guiding me. He's bearing my burdens with me. I love that picture. There's a whole lot there. This ram's head here is a California desert mountain sheep, and those are some heavy horns. To me, that reminds me of the story of Abraham and Isaac. The horns of the ram were caught in the thicket, and that, of course, represented Jesus as being the ultimate sacrifice. And if you want to pick these horns up, you can see how heavy they are. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had an incredible experience. One of our men in the Chattanooga area is going through some health challenges, and he was sharing with me, and I said, hey, we need to get some brothers together and pray for you. How often do we wait till after a diagnosis and somebody's on their deathbed to surround them and pray, right? And then anoint them. So we got together in this guy's fire pit area behind his house, and we surrounded him and prayed for him, and we actually anointed him with oil from that horn on his head. Talk about an experience. God wants us to do things out of the ordinary. Follow the Spirit. He wants to bless. Okay? And then, of course, a chainsaw, the ultimate. Then we have the hammer. Don't be a hammer, right? Okay. Now, let's wrap up. We've got 2 presentations. The first one's going to be on actually fitness. And Mike, you ready? Come on up. As Mike's coming up here, I've gotten to know Mike over the last, number of years. And I tend to come to the PE center once in a while and push some weights around. Not lately. But anyway, Mike is going to share a little story as it relates to lifelong fitness.
I got to start. I got to be honest. I've taught tennis at Southern for about 12 years, and I have never seen a racket like this. But I'll tell you, this is a great way to bond with our wives, isn't that? I mean, wouldn't that be great? One handle for her, one handle for you. Good luck playing that match, gentlemen. But yeah, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that. Strong finish is what we want to do. We're all started. We've all started. We're all living our lives right now. Now it's all about finishing strong. Before I go any farther, let's pray. Kind Heavenly Father, thank you for this awesome time that we have already spent together. I pray that this point forward, everything that comes out of my mouth came from you and nothing from myself. In Jesus' name, amen. Gentlemen, I want to establish something really quick. I am not a runner. I am not a runner. Never in my life have I considered myself a runner. I teach fitness classes at Southern Adventist University, and I tell my students, if you see me out running, take a picture, because there's probably flying pigs right behind me or something like that. I am not a runner. As a matter of fact, I don't think running is, well, let me put it this way. It's not biblical. It's not biblical. Running came into existence after sin. So if you think about it, and if you read your Bible, Enoch walked with God. That's the facts. So I'm just following my religion, people. I'm not a runner. Anyway, so to get here, oh man, about 4 years ago, my oldest daughter and I decided we wanted to do this backpacking trip up in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York. All right, I'm all over that. Mount Marcy, the highest peak. It's what she wanted to do. Let's do it. So we started planning this, and 2 years later, we were in New York, had all our gear, and didn't work out. We had planned for rain, and the temperature dropped that time we were there. As a matter of fact, if we had climbed Mount Marcy in July, during that time, we would have had snow and ice to deal with in July. You kidding me? I mean, good night. So forget it. We decided we will postpone it. 2 years later, we're back in New York, and we're ready to go. She comes down with bronchitis. Oh, I'm sitting in my mother-in-law's house. She's sitting across from me the day we're supposed to leave, and she's just crying. 4 years we'd been planning this trip, and she's just bawling her eyes out. Dad, I want to go. And I said, we're not going. Forget it. Don't worry about it. And she looked up at me across the breakfast table, and she said, Dad, get your boots. We're going. I said, all right, I'm with you. Needless to say, we had a slow hike. But it wasn't just because of her bronchitis. Sometimes to get here, you got to walk through things like this. That's the trail we were hiking on. Apparently, there was a lot of rain up in the Adirondacks before we got there. And a lot of the trail, some of that we had to hike through, ankle-deep water, puddles the size of Texas. It was just a great time. The black flies were out, the mosquitoes were out. Challenging. Let me tell you, gentlemen, that was the hardest hike I've ever done in my life. But I did it for 3 reasons. There they are. Gentlemen, I don't care if you are married. I don't care if you're a parent. I don't care if you're a grandparent. There are reasons in our lives to keep us moving and why we need to keep moving. Our society has changed a lot. It's been mentioned several times today that we are spending too much time looking at things like that, screens. Not enough time moving. I get this question all the time. Students come up to me, ask me this. Other faculty, staff ask me this. What in the world? I answer this question about 1,000 times a year. What is the best thing? What is the minimum? What can I do to burn calories, lose weight, so on and so forth. So I've come up with this answer. Cooking is the best way to lose weight. Best way to burn calories. If you were looking at something like that, you would lose weight because you wouldn't eat it. So, problem solved all around. Problem solved. The problem is, this is where it was supposed to start. This is what it was supposed to be like. God put us here to work, not to sit on our keisters, not to sit around and watch. God put us here to work, to move, to move. And society has changed all that. I mean, if you think about it, I could do everything. I could do everything that I need to do any given day from my phone, which is scary, Several of you are nodding your heads. You can do it. It's possible. You don't quit. You don't quit because you got old. You don't quit moving, I should say, because you got old. You got old because you quit moving. I know several people. How many of you have ever heard of Jack Blanco? Dr. Jack Blanco works at Southern Adventist University. He's in his late 80s now. Yeah. I've worked with him a lot as his personal trainer. And that young man, how many of you have ever been slapped by Dr. Jack Blanco? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about that. You know he's there when he comes up and hits you on the back. He's not getting old. I hope he's around when the Lord comes, because he's doing just fine. He's 80-some years old, and he's a wellness center member. Comes in 2-3 times a week, works out. The man's had a couple of strokes. He keeps moving. He's still moving. Find some activity that you love and just do a lot of it. Doesn't matter. I mean, for crying out loud, I could make this speech so complicated and give you guys all kinds of data and numbers and tell you how to do push-ups and bench press and everything like that. That'll mean nothing to most of you. Find something you love to do and do it. Get moving. It really doesn't matter. I tell my students, I don't care how fast you move, just get moving. Just get moving. We only notice our bodies when something goes wrong with it. How many of you have been there? Man, I got this ache, got this pain, better go to the doctor. We have, in effect, betrayed our bodies, ignoring and dishonoring them by using them purely as locomotive devices for our head. That's messed up, people. That is messed up. So, I'm going to throw this at you. Highest rates of physical inactivity, 2018. Come on, Georgia. Come on, Georgia. You shouldn't be on that list. There shouldn't be anybody on that list. You're looking at about 1 in 3 people in the state we're sitting in that are not active. That's scary. I show these stats to my students, and I tell them they're the generation to make this change. We are going to change things, starting with you. Gentlemen, you can change things. You're all still breathing last time I saw you. You can change things right now. Now is the time to get moving. So, on that note, everybody get up. I know we just took a break. That means nothing to me. Everybody, let's do some toe presses. Do them. There we go. Let's get some blood flowing. You know what? I tell my students do this in their class. You get bored in English class, stand up, start doing toe presses. You get bored in chemistry class, stand up and start doing toe presses. Everybody stop. Everybody put your hands together like this. Now press. Now press. Like you mean it. Let's flex those pecs. Let's go. Come on, Leland. All right. I tell my students that they can do all kinds of exercise while sitting in any one of their classes. Everybody sit back down. You're going to love this one. You're going to love this one. Everybody, flex everything you have. Sit up straight. Flex everything you have. I should see people rising off of their chair because they're flexing their glutes. That's good. Good, good, good. Hold it. Hold it. And relax. Now you keep, I got to be careful. I tell people to flex their glutes while they're sitting down. They look like Pop-A-Mole. You guys remember that game from the arcade? Anyway, All right, exercise is not enough. It's not. We can work out for a half hour and do nothing the rest of our day. Exercise is not enough. Research suggests that. Therefore, a greater caloric output occurs throughout the day rather than during one vigorous exercise. If you're only going to work out, if you're only going to move for a half hour a day, that's not going to cover it, gentlemen. It's not going to do it. Not going to do it. We got to increase your NEAT. What in the world is that? Your non-exercise activity. Your non-exercise activity thermogenesis is the right way to say it. Increase your NEAT. What does that mean? Well, walk more. There's one way to do it. Just get up and walk. Everybody should be moving, and I love the fact that we take breaks from sitting around in here. Love that. Everybody should be moving as much as possible. Fidget. How many of you do that? Keep doing that. I found these fidget spinners. They're being banned from classrooms across the country. Are you kidding me? Let the kid have it. Let the kid have it. Make rules about it. He can't throw it across the room. He can't, hit it against people. That's bad. But let him fidget. Let him fidget. That kid's got energy to burn. Let him start burning it. Let him do it. Take the stairs. Take the stairs a lot. Take them twice. Take them 3 times. Get off of that elevator. Get off that escalator. Don't sit for more than 30 minutes at a time. Man, now that's a tough one. Now that's a tough one. Some of you have jobs where if you get up every 30 minutes and did something for 5 minutes, you think you're wasting your time. Not true. Research has proven time and time again that if you let your blood circulate, you'll be better at what you do. Move. Use a standing desk. Anybody use one of those? Yeah. They're getting big. They're getting big across the country. People are starting to use them more and more just because we're tired of sitting, using some of the biggest muscles of our body as a seat cushion rather than what we should be using it for. This is what Ellen White says. Strength comes by exercise. Activity is a very condition of life. She's talking about everybody using their God-given gifts. And if you don't use them, it's like sitting around doing nothing. Not using your limbs, you're going to lose it. You don't use it, you lose it. Remember that old saying? Gotta love that. So, 2 things. I can sum this up. Exercise. Find something you love to do. Do it for 2.5 hours every week. I'm not asking much. Find something you love to do and do it for 2.5 hours a week. You don't have to run. You don't have to do that. I mountain bike. I walk. I walk my dog every day. But I walk like I mean it. I walk like I mean it. Okay? Do it for 2.5 hours a week. I teach a lot of activity classes, so I have a little advantage. Matter of fact, let me tell you a little bit about me. I have 4 older brothers. 2 of my brothers sit in cubicles all day. I tell them this all the time. They hate me. They hate me. All you do is you get to play all day. And I'm like, yep. I chose my line of work. You may make a lot more money than me, but I've got abs still. Yours are still hidden. We got to fix that. I can talk trash with my brothers. Increase your NEAT. That means just get moving more throughout your day. Increase your non-exercise activity. Just get moving. Just get up and move. Just move. Even if you are just sitting right where you are right now, move something. Move something. Tap your leg. I love people that tap their legs. I'm like, hey, you're getting exercise. They look at me funny. Those 2 things will change everything and get rid of that stat we saw if people will just do those 2. Any questions? Bring it. 1. Was that a question? I didn't hear a word he said. What did he say? I didn't hear him. No. Oh, he's speechless. Anybody? No questions. No kidding. Yes, sir. Good question. So you're looking at a time factor. Everybody wants to know, what do I have to do to, anything, to increase my fitness, to increase my health, all of those kind of things. 2.5 hours per week is like a minimum number. But that's deliberate exercise. If you're increasing your NEAT, you're also increasing that as well. Any movement is better than the movement you're doing right now, which is none. So get moving. Question. Say that again, I'm sorry. Walking up and down the stairs is better. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, stairs increases your caloric burn by about 33%, just doing the stairs. Just rather than walking just across and going up an elevator or something like that. Sir? Very true. Very true. Get up and move. Get up and move for any length of time. I tell my students, and I teach a class called Fit for Collegiate Life, and they have to take this, they have to wear heart rate monitors. I get a report of what they've done every week. They get graded on that. And the 2.5 hour thing is an absolute minimum. The first couple of weeks of school, everybody's trying to figure out what they're doing, what they should be doing, how long they should be doing it. Grades are not so great. Suddenly students start figuring it out. They can play basketball in the gym and get credit for it. They can go out and play soccer on the field and get credit for it. They can go for a stroll with their girlfriend and get credit for it. Now, when I hear that, I say, you ain't strolling. You're walking like you mean it. Leave her behind, big man. Let's go. Never leave your lady behind, gentlemen. I didn't say that. Question. Exercise you don't enjoy, is that what you just said? Yeah. There is a lot of truth to that. Exercise is supposed to kick in the good endorphins when you're done. And from a chemical standpoint, you're not going to get that if you're doing something you absolutely hate, because there's negative endorphins, and there's things like cortisol that builds up in your system when negative stress happens. Yeah, you're not going to get the same benefits. Very true. If I go for a run, I'm going to hate every second of it. Anybody else? I think a lot of guys can agree with me on that. Go for a walk. Go for a bike ride. Do it. Go for a swim. Do they have to do what after a certain age? Should they continue weightlifting? Ooh, good question. I used to have a bench like this, not exactly like that, but I used to have all the Olympic weights, everything like that, and I sold everything, sold it all. Too many of my friends that I used to lift with in college have gone under the knife with their knees and their shoulders, their hip, and they're the same age I am. I'm in my mid-40s, and I don't want to go there. I sold everything. I do body weight exercise right now. I've had a lot of, people that do a lot of that come up and tell me, you ain't lifting then. I said, come work out with me sometime and we'll see. I've had a couple people take me up on that. They were sweating. I made them sweat. I made them work. Well, let me answer his question real quick. Body weight exercise is probably the best thing you can do for yourself, because not only does that, if you can handle your body weight, people, you can handle anything. Since when do we need to go pick up a car? Since when is that necessary? And there are people out there lifting that kind of weight that they could go pick up a car. Are you kidding me? Body weight exercise is the best thing you can do as you age. As you age. Flexibility, you should be doing that daily, on a daily basis, regardless of what you're doing. 5 to 7 days a week, you should be doing some form of cardio exercise, walking, jogging, dare I say it, running, biking, those kind of things, okay? You should be doing those kind of things 5 to 7 days a week. 2 to 3 days a week, you should be doing strength training, okay? Add that to your workouts during those other days. 2 to 3 days a week. You can increase that if you want a little bit, but not too much. Every day, you should be doing some form of flexibility. I'll tell you what, I get up and I start stretching. Before I go to bed, I have a whole routine I go through so I can get up the next day. That's very true. Somebody raise their hand back there. I'll try to hear you. I'm deaf. Marty's going to help me out. I didn't hear. Oh, man. Oh, man. Now I'm drooling. You and I could sit down and talk for a while, and we could walk for a while, and I could help you out with a lot of things. One, you want to make sure your core is solid. Your core supports your spine. Everything follows your spine, gentlemen. Your head is the top of that. If you're looking at your feet while you're walking around, you're going to have pain real soon, and it's going to catch you. Keep your head up. Keep your shoulders back. Act like you're a Christian that God loves. Head up, shoulders back. Okay? Secondly, it could be very well a flexibility thing. You could have muscles that are super tight on one side, and they're pulling and tight, and they're pulling you a little off. Symmetry, I tell my students, I teach a personal trainer class, certifying personal trainers, and I tell them symmetry is key. Everybody works on their abs, and they forget about their back. Their abs look great, and they have lower back pain before they're 25. Come on. That kind of thing shouldn't be happening. Symmetry is key. You may very well have some of those kind of issues, and I'd be happy to sit down and chat if you want. How do you fix plantar fasciitis? A lot of people have plantar fasciitis. Now I'm starting to sound like an infomercial. Golly. Yeah, best thing for that is ice and, strengthening those muscles in your legs. Keep that kind of thing from happening. Plantar fasciitis is basically caused because we got too much weight pushing down on the connective tissue under our foot. If we lose a little bit of weight, we ice it, we keep the inflammation down. Generally, that treats it better than taking a bunch of pills. I don't know anybody that's going to say that the tree of life has pills on it. I don't know anybody that's going to say that. So, best way to treat things is the way God intended in the first place. Question? I'm sorry, say that again? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's 1,000 ways to deal with 1,000 things. That's one of them. Putting certain inserts in the bottom of your shoes to help support that arch is a great one. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. 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 There's a great podiatrist right in Collegedale that will tell you as much natural as she can before she'll prescribe anything at you. So those are the kind of people you want to talk to. They're talking about rest, they're talking about ice, they're talking about exercise. They're talking right. Inserts, those are good. Somebody raise their hand over here. Sir. Yeah. Yeah. I will say this real quick. You can Google anything, but you can Google exercise and still gain weight. That's the truth. You got to actually get off the Google and get up and do it. So just a thought. Hey, gentlemen, thank you for your time. I will be in the back if you guys need to talk about anything specific, but I got to give it up to my good friend Marty.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I can't wait to get moving, right? Wow. Okay, now we're wrapping it up with men's health, and what that means is things that maybe we procrastinate on that have to do with some things that are really vital. Dr. Tracey Wallace, if you look at his bio, he went to Loma Linda University. He's also a public health expert. And so I've only talked to Dr. Wallace on the phone, but anyway, super good guy, just what I've been able to get to know him on the phone, but I look forward to your message right now.
Thank you. It's great to be here. A while back, a gentleman in his 50s came into my office. He was there because he had an infection at the side of his neck. When he came in, he was very specific. He said, "I'm only here for antibiotics. That's all I want. I just want antibiotics for my infection, and I'll be out of your way." Well, as you know, when you go to a doctor's office, they do vital signs. And so we checked his vital signs. Normal blood pressure is 120/80. His blood pressure was 230/120. Normal pulse, 70/80. His pulse was going at 115. Normal temperature is 98.6. His temperature was 100.5. So this gentleman had an elevated blood pressure, an elevated pulse, and a fever. So we looked at him and we said, this is a little more complicated than just simply giving you antibiotics. He got mad. "This is why I don't come to doctors, because you guys always make a big deal about everything. I just need some antibiotics and I'll be on my way." But we were insisted. There is more going on here. You need to go to the emergency room. He left, angry, upset. A few hours later, he went to the emergency room. He ended up being admitted to the hospital. Unfortunately, in less than 48 hours after he'd been in our office, he was dead. He had high blood pressure, undiagnosed, uncontrolled, untreated. He had high cholesterol, undiagnosed, uncontrolled, untreated. And he had diabetes, uncontrolled, undiagnosed, untreated. The diabetes weakens your immune system and makes you more susceptible to infections. And when you have an infection with diabetes, it is harder to treat it. The high blood pressure over a time period will weaken the heart, and the high cholesterol leads to more plaque on your arteries. Now, I cannot prove this, but I believe that if you had ran into this gentleman approximately about a week before he passed away, and you saw him on the street and you said, "Hey man, how are you? How are you feeling?" He likely would have said, "I feel fine. I feel great." Because it is possible to have diabetes and high blood pressure and high cholesterol all floating around in your body without any symptoms. So that's why I'm here. Because if I can prevent one of you guys from going down that path, then I would give God the glory and my living will not be in vain. So I have titled this, Know Your Numbers. Know your numbers. I'm going to keep it really simple, but know your numbers. The first number that everybody in this room needs to know is their blood pressure. Everybody in this room should know your blood pressure. Not just what normal blood pressure is, but what your blood pressure is. Now, as I said before, normal blood pressure is about 120/80. There are some newer guidelines that say it should be a little bit lower than that, but generally speaking, 120/80. And then when it gets above that, you start to get into this pre-hypertension, which is a new category. But suffice it to say that you want your blood pressure to be less than 140 on the top and less than 90 on the bottom. So what is this blood pressure? When we say blood pressure, what do we mean? Well, everybody sitting in this room, your heart is contracting and relaxing, contracting and relaxing. When it contracts, it's forcing blood out of the chambers of the heart into various parts of the body. And when it contracts, that pressure that is created there, that's the higher number, the systolic. When it relaxes and fills back up with blood, that's that lower number, that diastolic. And so it's a simple pumping system. And so if there's more pressure in the system, then your heart has to work harder to contract and to move that blood out. And if it's working harder to pump that blood because of increased pressure, it is going to tire out quicker. And there is the problem with high blood pressure, because over time it leads to things. It leads to complications such as heart attack and stroke. And in fact, that's what happens. You can have high blood pressure for years without any symptoms, and suddenly you have a heart attack, suddenly you have a stroke. And for some people, unfortunately, that is the first time that they recognize that they have high blood pressure. So the first number that you need to know is your blood pressure. Now, what always happens, particularly when you're dealing with Adventist groups, is what can I do besides taking medication for my blood pressure? Well, he's already hinted at some of the things. In fact, he's already at the end of this talk, because he's already talked about exercise and diet. Ginger and garlic and these kinds of things can lower the blood pressure. But understand, for a lot of us, there are some strong genetics at work here. And even doing the right thing, you may need still to be on blood pressure, because we're not in heaven yet. And so even though you may do all the right things, you may not get the result. But the first number that's very important for everybody in this room to know is, what is your blood pressure? And if you have it checked and it's great, that is good. But 2 or 3 months down the road, it needs to be checked again, because blood pressure will start to creep up, particularly as we get older. The next number that everybody in this room needs to know is your cholesterol. What is your cholesterol number? As I already hinted at before, that cholesterol builds up in your arteries and can clog your arteries over time. And it's a slow process, and it's a subtle process. And so even as it's happening, people may not know that it's happening until they have a heart attack or a stroke. But it's the cholesterol that builds up in the arteries. And so cholesterol is a number. It's a blood test that you do. And 200 is the number, is a cutoff number. You want your cholesterol to be below 200. But it's not just that number, because it's good and bad cholesterol. LDL, bad cholesterol. HDL, good cholesterol. You want your LDL, that bad cholesterol, to be low. You want your HDL, which is the good cholesterol, to be high. So ideal, you want your LDL to be below 100, but below 130 is acceptable. You want your HDL to be above 40, but if it's actually above 60, it is actually what we call a negative risk factor, meaning it's actually helping you. It's actually helping your system the higher that HDL is. So the first number everybody needs to know is what? Blood pressure. The second number everybody needs to know is what? Your cholesterol. Now, I have started doing this test on people, coronary calcium scan. It's been out for a few years, but it's a scan that you can do that actually looks and sees if there's actually plaque building up on the vessels of the heart. And it's not actually looking at the cholesterol, it's actually looking at the calcium, which is also in the atherosclerosis, in the plaque that builds up. So if somebody comes in, I'll give you a couple of examples. So I had a guy come in, he was right at age 40. His cholesterol was high. And for me, I don't like to put people on cholesterol medicine unless it's absolutely necessary. I'm much more into lifestyle changes, and that's what I'd prefer to do. But what we need to know is not the fact that your cholesterol is high, but is it translating into plaque building up on your arteries? So this scan, it only takes about 5 minutes to do, can actually show if there is plaque building up. I started using this about 3 or 4 years ago after it actually saved a guy's life. He'd actually went to the cardiologist and it said that he was fine, and we did this scan and the numbers were off the charts, and I was like, there is something not going right here. And it turned out that he was completely built up with plaque. They don't even know, the cardiologist is baffled to this day as to how in the world they went through a stress test and he made it through. In this case, with a gentleman of 40 years old with his cholesterol being a little high, I sent him for that scan, and his score came back at 0, which means there was no plaque buildup in his vessel. So I said, guess what? We're not putting you on cholesterol medicine. You just go on a low-fat diet, and we'll do the scan again in a couple of years. This scan, not covered by insurance, anybody's insurance, $100. Just $100, and it's worthwhile to have a simple test like that that's 5 minutes just to know if there's any plaque building up in your vessels. So the coronary calcium scan. This is not done actually in a doctor's office. It's done in these like outpatient radiology centers. In Atlanta, they're all over the place. And in fact, there's these screenings that pop up called life screening and these kind of things. And they do these kind of scans. And I would contact any hospital and look, because it only takes 5 minutes for them to do, costs $100 or less. And they're doing a lot of these. And it's gotten very popular. So I would think any hospital is probably doing them right now. But it's worthwhile doing. And once you've done it and it looks good, you don't have to do it the next year. You're not going to go from 0 plaque to like ton buildup in a year or 2 or 3. But to do that, just to know where you are, can be life-saving and life-changing. And of course, we know the foods that raise your cholesterol. And I really hope nobody finds that picture appetizing, because even just to look at it. But this is the American diet. And as I always say, no American should be eating the American diet. This is what we should be eating, the actual food that God actually intended us to eat in the beginning. These are the kinds of things that lower our cholesterol. Okay, so the first number everybody should know is your second number everybody should know is your. The third one is the PSA, prostate-specific antigen. This is a protein that is released from the prostate and can be measured in the blood. And it's very important that you know your PSA. Not just the doctor says, well, it's fine. It's to actually know what that number is. Now, this chart is showing that normal PSA is below 4. But as we get older, our PSA gets higher. And why that is because everybody in this room, every guy here, as we get older, our prostate enlarges. Now, we go through the first half of our lives not even knowing that we have a prostate. But for some of us, the first indicator that we have a prostate is because we're going to the bathroom a little bit more than we used to. Some of you will say, there was a time I could go all day. I would go places, never know where the bathroom is. Now I seem to know where every bathroom is. I'm going there, I need to go. I'm getting up in the middle of the night because I need to use the bathroom. That's your prostate enlarging. And then the PSA tends to go up with that as well. But the PSA is used as a screen for prostate cancer. And prostate cancer, as you know, is running rampant among men. Because it's only men that can get it, but I suspect everybody in here probably knows somebody who's had prostate cancer. And I always have to make and emphasize this. African American men have the highest rate of prostate cancer in the world. Highest rate of prostate cancer in the world. So everybody, but especially African Americans, need to know what their PSA is and need to know that it is normal. And if you check it and it looks good, then you need to check it the next year. The PSA is not supposed to go up more than 1 point from 1 year to the next. So I already told you that the PSA should be less than 4. I have diagnosed prostate cancer in a man whose PSA was only 3.5. It never got above 4. But how that happened is because his PSA was 1, 1, 1, 1 every year, and suddenly it went up to 3.5. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Something's going on here. We checked it again. It was staying at 3.5, and then one thing led to the other, and we detected prostate cancer at an early age. But the problem with the PSA is that you can have what we call false positives. This is why there's all this controversy about we don't know if we should do the PSA or not, because you can have false positives. And what I mean by that is I had another gentleman. His PSA was 25. I just finished telling you less than 4 is normal. His PSA came back with 25. And I did what I always do. I said, come back in 1 month. Let's check it again and see where it is. He came back in 1 month, and his PSA was now 2. It went from 25 down to 2. How in the world did that happen? The guy's a runner. Exercise will increase your PSA. And his PSA shot up to 25. It was a long-distance run. I mean, this guy would ran a few hundred miles a month, and his PSA went down. And so if your PSA is elevated, the first thing that needs to be done is be checked again. Sexual activity will increase your PSA. Urinary tract infection, various medications can increase your PSA. And so the first thing I do when I have an elevated PSA is to say, okay, let's check it again in about a month. I would say, okay, lay off in vigorous activities 48 hours before. You don't have to be for the whole month, 48 hours before, and even sexual activity, because we want to get a true reading of what your PSA is. Now, when you're checking the prostate, We all know that besides the blood test, there is another test that we do that we do not like to talk about, okay? And it's called the digital rectal exam. It only takes a second or two to do the exam, but it is important in order to have a proper screen. Like I said, it only takes a couple seconds. If you're having the exam and he's back there for 30 seconds, something's going on, something strange, okay? All right? Only takes a few seconds to do it, all right? And you can quickly feel it and know if this feels abnormal. But, and I hate to say this, but I have to say it anyways, is the fact that if you had to make a choice between either the PSA or the digital rectal exam, the PSA is actually more important, okay? Because that's where I found the vast majority of prostate cancer is because that PSA had been jumping up. Okay, so the first number everybody needs to know is what? The second number everybody needs to know is what? The third number everybody needs to know is what? Okay, now the last number. I'm keeping it simple. A1C. A1C. This is a measure for diabetes, okay? A1C, it's a simple blood test. It's done a single time, and you get a number, and that number can tell you if you are diabetic or not. And yes, as I already said, you can have diabetes and not have any symptoms. Now you go and you Google, you're going to find out, frequent urination, thirsty all the time, losing weight. But people will go, I don't have any of those, so I don't have diabetes. No, not at all, because you can have diabetes and not have any of those things. And the problem with diabetes is what it does to your body over time. It causes damages from head to toe, from eyes to heart to kidneys to affecting circulation in your feet to leading to amputations. All these things are complications of diabetes over a period of time. And it makes a difference. And the earlier that you can find this and detect it, the better off you are at being able to treat it and to get it under control. And so this is, let me see here. Oh, suddenly stopped working. All right. I just got one more slide. I was going to show you what the A1Cs, the actual numbers are. For some reason it won't advance. So the A1C, I may have to just write this down because I can't get the slide. So normal, A1C is a number. If your A1C is less than 5.7, it is considered normal. You are not diabetic, that's normal. If your A1C is between 5.7 and 6.4, you are a pre-diabetic. Pre-diabetic means you're not diabetic yet, but you're in that class where you're going, if your PSA is 6.5 or higher, then you are a diabetic. And we didn't have this test like, say, 15 years ago, but that single test, and what that PSA is actually measuring is your average blood sugar over the last 90 days. Sorry, PSA, A1C, sorry, A1C. Wow, got back, thank you. So the A1C is measuring your blood sugar over the last 90 days. And so your A1C is not going to be, you cannot blame a high elevated A1C on the fact that you had ice cream last night, because it is measuring your average blood sugar over the last 90 days. Now, the question comes up, if you're diabetic, what can you do about it? And you know that when you go to the doctor, they are prescribing medications to control it, all right? But diabetes can be reversible. You can reverse the diabetes. Now, I always caution, it's not everybody, it's not every time they can do it, but I've seen people reverse their diabetes. I've seen men do it, and I've seen women do it as well, reverse their diabetes. But in all my experience, I would have to say I have seen far more men, reverse their diabetes than women. And the only way I can explain it is the fact that when I sit down and I tell them that this is the rest of your life, this is your life expectancy going down, this is going to decrease your chance of living to be an older age, it's like once they get that, when some of these guys get it, it's like it wakes up this warrior thing in them. It's like they become this military, this athlete, this goal-oriented, and it's like they put on blockers, and it's like, if this is what I need to do, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm not eating this junk. I'm not drinking that junk. I'm just starting to do that. I'm carrying my lunch. I'm preparing my lunch. And they usually have a supportive wife who's like, yeah, I'm on board with this. Whatever you need to do, you do it because I want you around. As I heard one lady say that, she says, if he drops dead and leaves me with these kids, I'm going to kill him again. You want to be, these women want you around. These women want you around. And so I had one guy, his A1C, he told he was about 6.5 because of diabetes. His A1C was 10. He came back in 3 months and his A1C was down to 6. Lifestyle changes. He'd lost weight. He just stopped eating all that stuff. He started taking his lunch with him. He started exercising and he dropped weight and he reversed his diabetes. I had another guy. He came back after 6 weeks and I told him, listen, that is way too quick. You need to give your system a little bit more time. He had a smirk on his face and he said, check it anyways. And lo and behold, he went from a 9 down to a 5.7 in 6 weeks. It's amazing to me how the body responds when you're exercising, when you're eating the right things. It's amazing how the body can respond and change so quickly. But the opposite is also true. It is scary what can happen to a body in just a few weeks. When you're eating the wrong things, when you're doing the wrong things, it can make such a big difference one way or the other. And so in keeping with the theme here, with everything that everybody is saying about self-care, taking time to care for yourself, we're out there trying to support the family. We're trying to help everybody else, but we need that time when we take care of ourselves. And really, that's why we're here today. This is really why I think we're here to care for ourselves, but we also need to care for ourselves and not neglect ourselves and to know our numbers. Okay. There's probably one question or so back there. Sorry, say it again. Sugar blockers? Oh, okay, all right. I mean, there are a number of different things out there. I mean, there's a number of things, like even take sugar blockers, those kind of things. The best way to block the sugar is not to put it in your mouth in the first place, okay? Okay, all right. Because, and understand, we live in a diabetic, unfriendly world, which is why I say that if somebody's really serious about making a change, they're going to be carrying around their food with you, because 9 times out of 10, wherever you go and somebody says, here, you want to eat this? It's not something you should be eating. If you're a vegetarian, if you're a diabetic, if you're just trying to eat healthy, 9 times out of 10, you're not getting the right thing, and that's why you should be carrying your food with you. And again, like I said, what I love is when a guy comes in, and I've told him he's got diabetic, and he comes with his wife, and his wife is like, okay, what do we need to do? Makes a huge difference. We say, what could we need to do? Because it takes some planning, it takes some organization to eat the right thing. Yes, sir. Oh boy, I'm not sure. Yes, that's true. Yes. Yes. That's true. That's true. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, this is a doctor talk. I understand everything you're saying. You may not have a clue what he's saying here, but know your numbers, and it is important to check in with a doctor once a year. And he's mentioning some other markers that you can actually check for. And then let me say this, guys, because this is something that I've encountered particularly among black men, because some of you guys don't like going to the doctors, okay? And it's taking one for the team. It really is. It's like, I'm going to go in there, do what I need to do. It's not about me. It's about the family. But understand this. You're not going to click with every guy. You're not going to click with every doctor that you see there. And I always like to just say, because I had a guy, and his wife had pleaded with him and said, please go to the doctor. He had gone to see somebody else, and He said the guy made him feel like a fool. He was asking a few questions, and I always tell people, there's no stupid questions. When you're talking about your health, there is no stupid questions. But this guy made him feel like such an idiot that he said, I would rather stay home and die than go to another doctor, than deal with that. And anyways, his wife pleaded with him and said, please go see Dr. Wallace. And I went in and I see him. This guy was having chest pain and was on the verge of a heart attack. But he would have sat home because he didn't want to go to somebody who humiliated him and make him feel embarrassed. And that's why I say, if you go to somebody and it's just not clicking, find somebody else, because you should feel comfortable with your doctor, and you should be able to ask him or her any question that you want and feel comfortable that he's answering you and he's responding to you. I saw one more question someplace. Okay, yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've. This was something else I was gonna touch to. There's no easy solution to that. You know, when we talk about blood pressure, we talk about lowering the sodium. The first thing that people are say, "Oh, but I don't sprinkle I don't sprinkle salt on my food." And that's not the problem. The problem is not the salt that you're putting on; it's the salt that's already in the stuff that you're eating. And we are going overboard with the salt. In fact, I've read for years that at some point the government is going to start clamping down and putting the salt content, because you can go to a restaurant and have a nice meal and get 3 to 4 days worth of salt in one meal. One meal. And so anything out of a can, anything at restaurants, things that come prepackaged are just loaded with sodium. But still, you know, when you're talking about what do you do with low sodium, for me, it's not as hard, because I go and I just eat the vegetables. I eat salad. When you're doing those kinds of things, you're not getting that sodium. The more natural that food is, the more simply it's prepared. And, you know, for example, I was showing you a picture of all that meat and those kind of things. And I said, I hope nobody finds that appetizing, because over time, even if you're eating that way, over time, your taste buds and those things can change. And you have an appetite for some of those healthier foods. And, you know, for me, a lot of times I'll eat some beans and some rice, and I'll have some people in the office come and look at me so sad. That's all you're eating, Dr. Wallace? Like, oh, I'm so sorry for you. Don't feel sorry for me. Look at that junk you're putting in your body. I feel more sorry for you and that meat and that junk that you're putting in your body. I'm happy with my beans and my rice. I'm very happy with it. But simple foods prepared simply make the big difference. Yes, sir.
Do you mind if I throw a caveat onto that question?
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm a nutrition coach. That's my profession.
All right. Oh, wow. Go ahead.
A lot of times, especially in the climate we live in right now, plant-based and vegetarian is becoming more popular.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're traveling a lot and maybe you don't have the ability to bring the food with you, or maybe you don't know how to prep it yourself, just a simple Google search and you will find, I guarantee, 5 or 6 different meal prep companies where you are headed or in between where you're headed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So most of these meal prep companies will automatically be able to make a serving size that fits you. They'll be able to choose your protein, whether that's plant-based or not. And then you can also choose high carb, low carb, more vegetables, less vegetables. So there's a lot more variation because of the popularity of the plant-based meal.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot more options out there. It's just going to take a little bit of time for you to
Yes.
plan. So
Yes.
if you know you're heading these places, do the search. If you're driving, go invest in a really nice Yeti cooler, and you can find the ones that are local to you that you can get to know them personally, and then you can figure out what that budget looks like. Most of the time, like I know I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. Clean Eats is a franchise that's in Knoxville, and it probably is comparable to if you go out and eat lunch or buying lunch for yourself every day, you're going to spend the same amount on one of their clean pre-cut meals than if you just go to a local restaurant. So that's probably the biggest and best option, because you still have some choice and customization. I think as far as like avoiding sodium altogether, understanding where sodium is found, if it's a pre-processed food or a food that's made to last longer on the shelf or when you buy it, it's going to have more sodium in it. So if you go to a restaurant, especially something that's probably like a 3 or a 4-star restaurant, something that's higher, not fast food, their meats, their primer cuts, if you will, probably have less sodium in it, because it's considered, they're buying wholesale, they have to get rid of it faster. If you're eating something that I label fast food, it's going to process means it's going to last longer on your shelf. So something that's going to not spend, let me put it this way, if it takes 3 days in your refrigerator and then it's bad, it probably has low amount of preservatives and sodium in it. If it's going to last longer than a week, probably has more sodium in it than you want it to have. So that could be a rule of thumb of when you're going and looking for what can I eat, where can I find things, sodium, that kind of thing. Anything that's already pre-seasoned, drowning in sauces, that kind of thing. Those are some of the big red flags that you can find looking for sodium.
Wow, thank you for that. That's great. Thank you so much. That's really good. You know, the other thing, too, I would add is just the fact that, you know, when you go to restaurants, I mean, so much of us are just used to going in and ordering right off the menu. But I've noticed these guys, they want to accommodate you. They want you to eat there. And when you start asking questions, I don't want this, I don't want that, most of the times they will bend over backwards to make sure that you get exactly what you want. So this idea of let me go and let me just order off the menu doesn't have to apply. There's lots of things that they will do in order to accommodate you and what their specific diet needs. But you have to ask. If you don't ask, they're not telling you. I think my time is almost, okay, yes, sir. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to add something to the meal prep.
Mm-hmm.
A few months ago, well, maybe the beginning of the week, beginning of the year, my wife and I decided to do the meal preps. There are two companies that are really good as far as vegans are concerned, and that's called Green Chef and Purple Carrot. Purple Carrot is strictly vegan, and Green Chef has a multitude of dietary choices. They give you the ingredients. They list the nutritional value of each, the calories, the sodium, etc. And it's very adaptable to different diets. We have found that this is actually more economical than going out to certain and find the different ingredients, which some of them you may not have in pan at home. So just to add to
Yes, that's great.
been working out very well. It teaches you how to prepare, for example, vegetarian meals in a variety of tastes and ways. And my wife loves it. It only takes about 30 to 40 minutes to prepare. And as I say, you get choices. You can decide if you want that meal or if you want to skip it. Go to another week if you want to suspend. So it's worth a try. There are a few others out there, but these are the ones that we
All right.
actually use every
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Guys, I'm having a great time. Thank you so much for your time. I think our time is up, but thank you all very much.
Wow, I think we could do a whole weekend on men's health, it sounds like to me. And appreciate all the input and the questions, but I think that supper has been canceled. I just was notified. And there's going to be a hike around the lake. So, and those that want to do that can swim across the lake. So those are the two options. Or we have a unicycle. But anyway, no, seriously, it is time for supper. And thank you for your participation. Let's bow our heads as we go to supper. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this inspiring series of messages that challenge us all the way down to our core. We know that change is hard because we're men. We like comfort. We like the easy path, but we know that we've got to reject passivity. Lord, if you're speaking to our hearts, as I know that I am hearing you speak to my heart, may we embrace that and take action. Be with us now as we go for a meal. May we be wise in what we put on our plates and our portions. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, 6:30 back here.